I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hey, Foxy listeners, thanks so much for tuning in the show today. We're going to be talking about so many things that I love, but we're going to end it with like one of my super favorite things, but I'm not giving it away. You're going to have to wait to the end. But I have an amazing guest. Carina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Honey, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm delighted that we're going to be having a meaningful conversation with you and your audience.
So I've dug into you a little bit, but for those that are new to you, give us a little bit of your story.
Okay, yeah. So I have a very traditional job. I'm a business analyst by training. And when my children were about 8 months old, I launched a company, a planner company. And I had no business launching a planner company when my twins were just 8 months old. And it's been such a wonderful experience to be able to help people make empowered and quality decisions with their time. And my background, although, like I mentioned earlier, it's very traditional in a business setting, and went straight from undergrad to grad school. And creativity wasn't something that came naturally to me other than in my line of work. Like, I've always been very creative in helping organizations do the most with what they have, especially when it came to improving their business processes and doing things faster, or achieving the results that they wanted. And so there was a time in my life where I felt that I looked at my diary and my planner, and I found everybody else's to-dos except mine. And I found everybody else's lives like in the pages of my planner except mine. And so it came to a point where I was overscheduled, I was overweight, I was successful, and I was over it, and I wanted to make sure that that never happened to anyone else. And I wanted to make sure that I had something that anchored me in my days. And so that's how I founded my company. And I found, a lot of people say, like, did you find balance? I found an alignment that sits very well with me, that aligns both my purpose and what I'm good at. So even though it didn't come naturally to me, and it was something that I found out by accident, and I'm very happy.
Well, and that's, one of the reasons I wanted to kind of have you on the show, because I think there's this skewed version in the world of success. And I say it because I fell into it. I had like the typical 9-to-5 job, and, I was seeing success in it and I didn't like it. So I changed and decided to become an entrepreneur myself. And then opened different businesses and stuff and had success, but then was at the point where I'm like, I don't like this. Like, this is not what I kind of signed up for. But there's that, I think still to this day, and tell me how you feel about this, there's still that culture, like, you started this, you have to finish it. You can't just walk away. And I'm like, why? Like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what I want to be yet when I grow up. Like, and I say that in my late 40s. I don't know what I want to be.
I love that, because, I don't think we're meant to do the same things, to like the same things. We're not the same people. Like, in nature, like seasons change. We are allowed to change our minds. And I think success, like when I mentioned that I have a very traditional career trajectory and I'm still in my 9 to 5, which I love. And there's so much value in the gift that I have for, like, I look at how a business runs and I can just go there, right there. There's the leak there, right there, that we can have some efficiencies there. And I definitely love being able to do that. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is not the same as success. And I think that's when there's that disconnect, like, just because you're successful in one area, it doesn't mean that you feel fulfilled. So I think it's so important to explore that and see, because it's like today, like in today's world, I find that we're very good at looking at the gaps, right? Like where, especially as like for us entrepreneurs, there's always another course, there's always another thing, there's always, and people are looking at the gaps. And it's so interesting that we don't necessarily have to look at that. We can look at what we're good at and leaning into our strengths. And like, like you mentioned earlier, I'm a business process improvement expert, and I launched a planner business, right? What does one have to do with the other? And I'll tell you, I designed my company to be super lean, super efficient, and I used my gifts in that part of my life into a different part that brought me so much more fulfillment, because I was using my creativity in a different way. And I stumbled upon it. I was like, oh my gosh, I actually really enjoyed this. And because of that alignment, rather than trying to find the balance, and when I think of balance, I always think of like a scale, and there's like two things, and they're counteracting. But when you take everything off the scale, the scale has to be calibrated. Like, so when you take everything off and you think, okay, well, what does success mean to me? What makes me feel fulfilled? What brings me joy? When we ask those questions, and then think about what strengths do I have, or what strengths do I want to use to explore a different area. I think that's when we get closer to alignment and finding fulfillment.
I love this because I think there's so many times that people feel like they're, that they have to stay stuck, right? Or that they constantly, if they do feel like they want to pivot or they want to move to something else, it has to make sense to other people. And that's something that I never sort of applied to. Like even now I look back, on all the businesses that I've owned, and like I can draw a link. Like I'm like, yeah, I know how I got, from owning a bookkeeping company to, moving in to have a martial arts studio to having like a franchise. Like I get it. I can trace it. But on paper, I know people are like, what the hell? Like she's so flighty. Like it's just all over the place. But I love that you're talking about this, because I think it almost kind of gives that permission to people that, look for different ways that you can find the expertise of all of your past experiences, because you're going to pull from them in different areas, of your life, even if it's, going from, corporate to planners. Like you just have to be the one that can make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to be said about being aware of where you are in your life, and being aware of what you like and what you don't like, and then accept it. Because that's the part that most people skip. I often get asked, oh, Karina, so are you a morning person? And I'm like, no, actually, I'm not. But I do have to wake up early because I've got 2 young children. For the longest time, Tanya, I fought that because I was almost afraid to say, well, if I don't say that I'm a morning person, or if I don't strive to be a morning person, that means I'm not going to be successful. And I mean, at the age of 8 years old, I used to sleep in my uniform just so I could get 5 extra minutes of sleep. So, today I accept, and I step into the version of me that needs more sleep, that relishes in the fact that, when I sleep enough, like I am so much like more alert and just more present. So when we go from awareness to trying to get into action and we skip the acceptance part, that's when we kind of just go around in circles. So I think there's a lot to be said of like, I accept them at a point in my life where things don't feel settled or things don't feel like, don't feel quite right. And it's okay to be like, well, I see it. All right. So now from this place, where can I then look for more essentially?
And for a lot of people, I think really coming to terms with when do you work the best? And I agree with you. I came from that same culture where it's like, well, no, you're not, we don't live in the places where you can just like leave in the afternoon. And I remember visiting this tiny island called Calabria in Puerto Rico and my son was like still in like a stroller kind of thing, had just learned to walk. And I was like, oh, I need to like pick up some more formula, or it was something for him anyways at the store. And I went to the store and there was just a sign on it that said, taking a nap, be back in 20 minutes. And I was like, I remember being like, oh my God, how do you run a business like this? Like I was like, but then I went to the next shop and I was like, okay, well, I guess like I'll try this one. And they were like, tides in. And I like remember looking at my mom who lived there and I was like, what is happening? And she was like, people just do what they want to do when they want to do it because like we're on an island. Like, where are you going to go? And it took me years to realize, you know what? They're just like, I'm not going to function really great. I'm not going to give my best customer service. So I'm just going to go and do what makes me happy. And then like, I'll come back. And I thought, I went back. Like I waited an hour and I went back. So they didn't lose nothing, but I thought this really sort of gave me an eye opener to how I work. And, I think busyness is a badge that a lot of people feel like they have to hold right now. Like the more packed their schedule is, the more successful they are. Did you find that you did that and that over the years how you worked kind of changed, especially with having kids?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. I did that, but in reverse. Like, so let me explain. I started the company and I was so laser focused on building it in a way that I liked it and that felt right. And the company became successful very quickly. And then all of a sudden, I was asked, but why aren't you on LinkedIn? Why aren't you on Instagram? Why aren't you everywhere all the time, forever? And then when I took the blinders off, then it became like it felt like I needed to chase something. Like, oh, and I didn't realize at the time that I was measuring my success using somebody else's yardstick. And I was measuring how my company was being run, and trying to model that off of somebody else's chapter. And they were much farther along. And so that actually like made me lose my way a little bit, to be honest. And it took me a long time. And I was having a conversation with a lovely friend of mine, and she said, but what was wrong? What made you chase that? And then I just remember saying, nothing. There was nothing wrong. I just thought I needed to do all the things, And so I'm very passionate about the topic that we're talking about today, about busyness, because the busyness led me to not take care of my business. I was taking care of what was going on the outside rather than the soul of my business, which always started with product and customer. If I designed a killer product and I was serving the customers in the best way that I knew how, that was good enough. And for a long time it was. And granted, there's always room to scale, but it wasn't the right time for me to try to do all the things, and it made me lose my way. And the company suffered as a result, I'm not gonna lie. And what is so important to take care of is on whose yardstick are you measuring your success from. So like right now, it's so much more strategic and so much more important to focus on the activities that actually lead the business to where it is that you want to go, because you can't outsource your vision. You can't, like, you can't outsource your presence. You can't do that. Like, for the longest time, people told me that I had to be on Instagram and TikTok and pointing and doing the reels. And I really enjoy having conversations like this with one person. And I know that there's an audience listening, but I just prefer to to do this, to go to talk to someone rather than, putting something out there on Instagram and I don't know. Like I personally don't know. And it's a platform that I'm not as passionate about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, and I think this is such a key, message for everybody is, because we hear it all the time and I, fall into it too, right? This is how many times you have to post. And like, I've always been a rule breaker. So it does not surprise me that I do not follow like all of the rules and stuff. But what I found, is when I was doing that, when I was sitting and I was going, okay, to really get big on these platforms, this is how many times I'm supposed to post. These are the reels. These are the, like all of the other stuff. I found that my creativity,
Mhm.
was really being stifled because I was trying to like mass produce all of these thoughts and my traction wasn't there. And when I stopped and then all of a sudden would be like, oh, this is funny. I want to share this with somebody else. And I'd throw like a stupid video that I did like while I was walking and a thought that just came into my head. Like I was like, why are people latching onto this? Like I just still would never understand. And it took me a long time to realize because I was just being authentic. Like the stress wasn't behind it. I wasn't trying to mass produce my creativity because in doing that, I lost it.
Yeah, I hear you. On Instagram, I find specifically that I lose my voice. Like I
Mhm.
do. Like I'm not going to talk about um, what it means to make quality decisions with your time. I'm not going to talk about how there's promise in the pause in a way that I would if I'm having a conversation with you.
Mhm.
Um, and and I don't know, to quote Marie Kondo, like I at one point just went, does this bring me joy? Like that was not bringing me any joy. And I felt like um, I was losing that connection and the passion that I had for my business because it felt like a chore. Like you said, like you had to post this many times. And there was a bit of a learning curve. And just like for everybody, you're not going to be good at everything. So why not choose to lean into the things that that come easily to you, and from there you can grow into like expanding your boundaries, like on things that you might find interesting and exciting. And I can 100% say that there are platforms that just do not bring me joy. And if you're not going to have fun, if you're not along the way, right, then what is the point?
Yeah. And I think that's so true. It's, I've let go of trying to, like you said, live up to other people's standards. And that was a hard thing. Like that took me a lot of years for people of going, oh, but like you had this one business and it was like so successful. But now like you're kind of doing this and you're not as big and you don't have as many employees. And I'm like, mm-hmm. Like, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, I think I would love to see more people get past the point where they figure out what does success truly mean to you and how do you want to live it? Like I always say when people come and, when I have like new clients that come to me in my program and they're like, oh, yeah, like I want to make over $1 million. And I'm like, why? Like, what is your reason why? Like, what is tangible? What do you think is going to be so different at that point? And a lot of people go, I want the freedom. And I'm like, you ain't gonna get it up there. And it's that, that sort of skewed view of, more money, or more fame or whatever is going to equal me not being as busy. So for those people that are there, and I think there's so many people that are listening are like, I don't even have any clue how to not be more busy. How do I, lessen my schedule? Because, there's all of those fears of if I don't take as many meetings, if I'm not networking enough, if I'm not posting enough, I'm going to be forgotten. So how are there some tips that you could give for people to, maybe tips for those that need to baby step into it and those that are like, give it to me, I'll just do it all, I want out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Awesome. So I would say, for those of you who are listening, Like, how can you create more space in your schedule? I would say that you need to start with writing down a list of your values, right? So when I ask my clients this, the number one thing that comes up is their health and their family. And then I ask them to look at their schedule. And then they just go, oh, so creating space for the things that you find are important should be priority number one. So they get scheduled in first. So the other thing would be to, once you write down your goals, so what are your goals? Like, now that you know your values, what are your goals? And I would say write no more than 3. And the basis of that would be on the acronym EPIC that there's a writer, her name is Nick Pigeon, and she talks about creating epic goals, and that they have to be exciting, they have to be purposeful, they have to be intentional, and you have to stay committed. So what are, like, let's say 3 things that you're excited about that's coming for the remainder of the year, right? And when you write them down, and what is one action that would take 15 minutes or less, and put that in your calendar that would get you towards that goal. And then when you look at your schedule, you're going to start to see that everything else is going to be less important than those things. Because when people tend to cram their schedule with stuff, they're not necessarily aligned with their values, they're not necessarily aligned with their goals, they're not making value-based decisions. And so it just feels, no wonder they feel busy, because at the end of the day, they feel like they've accomplished nothing that's like near and dear to them, and that actually gave them momentum. So so that would be so 3 tips there. Find out what your values are. Think of 3 epic goals, write them down on a piece of paper, right? Because when you write them down, they're a lot more likely, you're a lot more likely to remember them and live into them and make them top of mind. And then what are some things related to those goals that will take you 15 minutes or less? Because the end result is for you to feel accomplished, not for not for you to feel like you're just cramming things, onto a diary. When I was doing research for my master's, and I was talking about workplace wellness, and when I was doing the same, when I was starting my company, I gave people different pieces of paper. There were different sizes, and I asked them to write out their to-do list. And it was so funny to me that they managed to cram it all in whatever size paper I gave them. So I was very intentional about making the to-do list in our planners small on purpose, because whatever's on there needs to really deserve a place, and so that's the criteria that I would use. And then, you create energy, like whether you believe in energy and woo-woo or not, but your cells have nerve endings, right? So like whenever you touch your skin in different pressures, you will feel either pain or you're going to feel delight. It just depends. But you are made of energy, and you transmit energy as well. So ask yourself, like, what is most important in the next 30 minutes that you need to breathe into and take a deep breath and like get clear what it is that you need to accomplish. So that's what I started with, when I tried to eradicate some things from my schedule. And just remember, just because your schedule looks full right now, it's not going to look like that forever, but you do get to draw a line in the sand and make the call. This is your time, and sometimes my clients will say like, oh, Carina, this is just how I live. I was like, yeah, but do you get to live your life like that, or do you lead it? Like, you get to make a call, like at the end of the day, from the time that you open your eyes in the morning, you're making some calls about how you want to get started, like, and how you want to lead your day. From the choices of what you say to yourself first thing in the morning, from the choices of what kind of nourishment you get from breakfast, or the type of things that you expose yourself to. Do you look at your phone first thing? So let's start leading our lives and like really taking a hard look at our schedules, and try to find yourself within it.
Well, I think that's such a good tip because I think oftentimes we look at our schedules, and I did this exercise with my group at the beginning of the year where we all gave someone else a week of our schedules and they color coded. So they took out all of the words and just color coded this was work, this was personal. Like I had made sort of like a color chart.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting was to get that back and see with no writing, so you can't make any excuses, where we were actually spending all of our time. And so beforehand, it was like, okay, this week you have to write down everything you do. So if you get up, whatever, like you write it down. And it was really interesting to see it without the words because the excuses also got taken out.
Yeah.
Because when we put the words back in, then they were like, oh, well, that makes sense. But I had this interview and it went a little bit longer. I had this meeting that like, and then all of a sudden we were making excuses for why we spent the time the way we did. So that was like sort of an interesting thing to take a different look and pull the excuses out. And that's when I really kind of was like, I think my goal this year is going to be to get the most white space, like blank space on my calendar so that I can choose to, live that life that I wanted to, where I could be like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything today. Like, or I'm going to take a day off, or, I'm going to work on a passion project, or I'm going to work on something that makes me happy, or I'm just going to take a walk, or whatever the case may be, because to me, that's success.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who are type A and who are listening, and who are like me, like 7 years ago, that every time we say like, white space and margin, you're freaking out and twitching a little bit. When you go to I'll just give you this analogy to see if it helps you bring your heart at ease. But when you go to a store, the stores that you find yourself like spending the most time in are the ones that have fewer items and they're nicely spaced out and that you can neatly walk around the aisles, right? Rather than the ones that are super crammed, you want to just get in and out of there. Your schedule should be something that reflects your day, that you want to spend time in, that allows you time for reflection. Because the purpose of having your time neatly scheduled in that way is so that you can make the best quality decisions, because they don't happen when you're like in the busyness. They happen in the quiet moments, right? Like when you're in a meeting, you most likely have already, you need some time to deliberate and you think about a decision. You're probably going to make that decision at a later date, or you need to come to the meeting with a decision of having made the decision already. And that happens when you're not in said meeting. That happens when you're not on a Zoom call. It happens in the in-between moments. And that leads the decisions that you make about your business, your health, your family, your future. So it's important to have that white space.
I love that. And I think it's a good tip for people too, to, decide how you even how you start your day. Like I remember we would start our day, the whole team would kind of get together, and be like, okay, what does everybody have? Like, what's on the schedule today? What does everybody have? What's everybody doing? Who needs help with what? And I found that we were becoming very hurried in our day, whereas now we start it like around the water cooler or around the coffee maker, like, hey, what'd you do last night? Like, what's up? How are you feeling today? Like, it was just a little bit more casual. And it was really interesting to watch how everybody changed. It was more casual. Like everybody was kind of getting to their desk and putting their drinks down and getting settled, but the productivity went up, which was really surprising because I was like, get in, get to it. Like I pay you to work. I don't pay you to sit around. But I was like, I need to start, changing that thought process of my own too, that now with the more of the blank spaces on my calendar, I find I'm more free to be like, you know what? This is what I want to work on right now. And I get stuff done a lot faster because I'm wanting to work on it, not going, oh yeah, this is on the calendar. I scheduled this. All right, 2 hours of working on this project.
And you're so much less you're less reactive when you have that space, to think, and you can actually make decisions about how you want to show up and what your energy is going to be like, instead of being that hurried energy and in that hurried like atmosphere, I guess. So it's there's a lot to be said to make comes to making power decisions, and it doesn't come from being reactive to things.
So talk to us a little bit about the stationery, because anybody, I said this at the beginning of the episode, like nothing makes me happier than a well done planner. I love a hard case, and I love a material feeling planner to it. And I love perforation. I don't know why. Anything that's perforated, which and we'll have the links to everybody to go and see the website, but I know like there was like a message that I sent out to you that I was like, I love this list and that is perforated. Like really made me so excited. But when you were designing, the planner, what was your passion? What was your purpose behind it? What did you feel like I need to make this because this is what I'm not finding?
Yeah, so I wasn't finding something that was polished and professional. I was finding things that had super bright colors and, which is great if that's what you like, but I needed something that I could take to a boardroom. I meet with CEOs and CFOs all day and with high-level executives. I couldn't necessarily take something that had, the coil and the bows and and there was a place for that. It was just not at my desk. And when I looked around, like my friends say, like I'm like a stationary stalker, but like when I looked around at the other women in my office and the men too, they had like the plain black notebook. And I was finding that whenever they needed to make reference to little things like, oh, when do I go on leave? And they wanted to look at like when certain holidays fell, they had to flip through pages. And I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if it was just right there, like so that you could make reference to when you could go and leave and have some notes on the side. So that's how it started. And then the other thing too is that people were carrying both a planner to check their meetings, because I designed this when like people didn't refer to their Google Calendar so much, but it still works. And they also carried a notebook because either they had to go to a class, and I work in a higher education, so it's not uncommon for us to go to seminars and classes and we want to take notes. So I wanted to combine something that had enough space for a mini notebook and a calendar and honestly a vision board that was tucked away, and it didn't have to be called a vision board, but something that had inspiring posts that could tuck away and still look very professional and neat. So that was the inspiration in terms of the aesthetic. I wanted something polished, professional, and I actually ran several iterations of production through different types of people. So I gathered my friends, my sister-in-law who's a lawyer, and one of my best friends who's a graphic designer, my other best friend who has her twins, and we have vastly different schedules. And I wanted to create something that could work for all of us. And what was really interesting was that the system works because it's so flexible. And I wanted to give them enough white space to make it their own. And it was just, it just worked. So I'm really proud of the stationery that we created. And I still to this day run the company with my sweet father-in-law who ships every order.
Oh, I love that. And then you grew into other things. So what made you decide to branch out from the planners? Because that was the, initial sort of design. And then was it just creativity that got you, that you were like, oh, this would be great?
That was actually the customers. I send out surveys twice a year, and I keep their opinions and their needs like very close to my heart. And so when I get enough requests for something, then I start making it. And some things I selfishly make because I like to have them. Like the portfolio that I use is what I take what I take to work, and I wanted something that could keep my journal and the planner and the pen. So, and the reason why, and just to go back as to why the planners are perforated, is because when my sweet girls would want to draw, and I wanted to keep their drawings on the fridge. So that's why the back pages of a lot of our products are perforated, or they detach quite easily, so that they can go from my notebook straight to the fridge, and I can showcase their art that way.
Well, it's funny because that, that makes perfect sense. But I was even thinking like, I like it because sometimes I take notes. I'm at a specific meeting or whatever, but I want it to go in something else. And no matter how, and I mean, I'm with all of the technology, we all work online, but there's still just something for me of having that paper planner, that is able to just sit out on my desk, or that I can take it and go sit outside and just unplug from everything else. Because for me, going on to my Google Calendar or trying to do that, all of a sudden I'm like, I just can't, like I did it this morning. I was like, okay, I just want to make sure what time this interview was. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I came on to see what an appointment was. I have now since looked at LinkedIn, Instagram, checked the weather, and like looked at my Fitbit. I'm like, I'm not even where I started. Right. So I think like for me, who can get distracted really easily, the paper is like an easy way to be like, I just need to look at my schedule and figure this out.
I get it. And, stationery is such, people, it's so interesting. I've always had a passion for stationery, but when I started working, it became an extension of because I wear suits to work. And so they're kind of like an accessory. They're, and depending on what you carry, it's telling whether or not you mean business. And that's what I wanted to create. Like I wanted to create stationery that was feminine, but yet looked like it meant business and could handle all the needs that we have. Like, you want a vision board? Yeah, you got it. You want a notebook? You got it. Like, because we wear so many hats. Like, I wanted to create a line of planners and diaries that would go the extra mile. But in saying that, what ties all the products that we have in our range is that they all feature intentions. They all feature gratitude sections, and they all feature space. There's a lot of space in our stationery.
So thinking back over, starting this business, being an entrepreneur and sort of going through that, is there, something that you could offer that you were like, if I had to do it all over again, I wish I would have had this piece of information or this advice or this quote. I wish I would have learned this way back then. What would that be?
Yeah, I wish that I would have leaned into my strengths a lot more, because I wouldn't have overlooked pieces of the business. Look, I have an MBA, right? So like I know business, and I took myself out of the game right in the beginning because I felt like I couldn't make it work because I was 40. And then it was because I couldn't make it work because I am not, I'm a mom. And then I couldn't make it work. I had all these excuses. And for the longest time, that kept me out of the game for so long. And I wish somebody had told me, like, Karina, you know how to do this. Like, you have a passion for it. Just go on. Because I kept like, oh, I'm going to try this. And it would take me the longest time to get started. It would just take me so long because I kept looking at the gap. I kept looking at what I didn't have, and it wasn't until someone that was doing my social media actually said to me, and I said, it would be nice to put a picture of me with my family so that customers get to know who I am. And Karina, you don't fit on the grid. And I was like, what does that mean? That's not the aesthetic. And I'm like, oh, that's not the payroll that you need to be on then, because it's not, I am a reflection of this company. People need to see that I am a mom, that I am 40, that, I belong on the grid. Thank you very much. And so, but for the longest time, I was just like, it took me a while to even say that, but yeah, that took me out of the game, like, mindset wise right from the beginning. So I wish I hadn't listened to those things. I wish I had led with more passion, and I wish that I had led with my business acumen top of mind, instead of being so scared and so hesitant, you know, you have a lot of value. Like if you're thinking, like for those of you who are listening, who want to start a business, you have so much value to offer, and like leaning into what you know is like, and especially when it comes to your intuition, is really important. So.
Well, and I think also too, remembering that there's always going to be somebody who says it's not the right time. Like in my 25 years, I've been told I was too young. I didn't have enough experience. I have too much experience. I'm too old. Like, I mean, there was just always somebody who had, you know, some opinion of, you know, what I should start or when I should do something or when I shouldn't do something. And I was always just like, hold my beer. Like that, when that saying came out, I was just like, not that I'm a drinker, but I was just like, all right, I'm going to prove you wrong. Right. But it was, you know, I think there's a lot of people who, you know, listen to that and, you know, worry about that. And my mom started her first business when she was 65, and she just, you know, went, and it was funny because I was like, you know, she's my mentor in personal life, in business, not that she was a business owner, but just her ideas, and she's my number one fan. So how could you not? But
Yeah.
it was interesting even to watch her fall into those pitfalls of, you know, how quickly your life can change to busyness, because she, you know, lived on a boat and was retired and had this like kind of what some would see on the outside as this calm life. But when she, you know, stopped living on the boat and came back, she just slid right in to the busy schedule and the busy life, and, you know, kind of having a little bit of that burnout. And she was like, I need to be open. Like I have a storefront. She's a reflexologist. And she was like, I have a storefront. I have to be open. And I was like, why do you have to be open? Like you're by appointment only. And she was like, I know, but then people want an appointment at 10. And, but like, you know, I don't want to come in that day. And I was like, but why are you explaining it to them? Like you can just say, I'm sorry, I'm all booked up that day. She's like, but I don't want to work that day. And I'm like, yeah, so just say you're booked. Like, you don't have to tell them, but it's that, you know, we all fall into that sense, you know, of, it was funny to kind of go, you can say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't take meetings on that day, and leave it at that. That's okay. There's no, you don't have to work certain hours. If you're more, like you said, if you're not a morning person and you're more productive at night, why do you keep trying to work in the morning?
Exactly. And it's so important to have like a community like yours and a podcast like yours where we can talk about things like this and people can hear it and just understand that they're not alone and that these feelings are so valid. And you know, we've been there. And yeah, just and take from this as like your permission slip that you don't have to feel like that, like alone, you know, like.
Yeah. And I think it's true. Like I always say to my son, like, you never need to know what you want to be when you grow up, because I still don't. So I'll never put that on you. And you're allowed to change your mind, about how you want to spend your days or how you want to spend your schedule. Like my schedule for the longest time was very rigid throughout the year. I'm like, okay, I would sit down. This is what I want to work this year. And then I realized I need to flex my schedule with how I, like you were saying earlier, how I want to live my life. So in the colder months, my schedule, there's more space available. In the summer months, I like to be outside. I live in Canada with limited nice weather. So, you know, my schedule shrinks during that time. You know, at Christmas, everybody wants, you know, in December, January, everybody sort of on the team wants extra time off. So we just kind of shut down. And I've never had anybody be like, I tried to contact you and you weren't there and it made me angry. So open. Like nobody's demanded. They were just like, oh, I think that's really cool. You take, you know, everybody takes that time off. And like you had said, when you had designed some things because it was something that you wanted, it was really selfish. Like I was like, when we take holidays, the entire business will shut down. And people are like, I think that's great. And I'm like, it's really selfish, because when I would just leave and take holidays, the phone would ring and everybody would call a question. I'm so sorry to bother you. I know you're on holidays. I just have this quick question about this. And I was like, I don't get a holiday. So I was like, that's it. We're all going on holiday at the same time.
Yeah, and you know too, like I find that when you don't set those boundaries and you just keep doing, sometimes you just out with so much resentment. And like
Mm,
it's just not, why would you want to feel that way, you know? Because you're saying yes to things that you actually don't want to say yes to. So if you're just going to be resentful of like how you're spending your time, then that's not great use of your time to begin with. So you might as well just say no. And I get it, like, you know, saying no is a skill that is important to learn and like, is important to flex, but the long, like the sooner you're comfortable, finding a way that you feel comfortable saying no to, like it's so important.
and do you find that, even if you have that skill, it's something that you constantly have to be conscious of because it's so easy to slip back into, feeling like you are saying yes to the right things when maybe it's not exactly right?
Oh, absolutely. I actually collaborated on an article to Stylist Magazine, and we talked about how introverts can learn to say no, like 3 different ways. And it's definitely a muscle that I had to learn to flex, you know, like throughout my life, not just with my business, but throughout my life. And it's something that I would start, like, it started with, like, so what am I comfortable doing? If I don't want to say no, I could send an email, and what would that look like? You know, how can I craft it so it sits well with me when I send it? And the first time it was a little daunting because I'm like, oh, you know, you hit send and you're like, oh, like, you
Yeah.
know,
I
but
hope they
then
take that the right way.
I know, yeah. But you know, it was okay. It was okay the first, the second, and the 10th time I did it. And in the beginning, I felt I didn't like the feeling of hitting send and then being like, oh, I didn't like that cringy feeling. And so I learned how to schedule my emails. And for some reason, that felt better, like in my body. I'm very in tune with how like my body feels when I do certain things, like especially in my business or at work. And so I was like, oh, that's actually felt easier to me to schedule that email to go out because it didn't have that immediate effect, you know?
Well, and
And
that's my favorite
I
feature of any email
yeah,
platform
I
is
love
scheduling.
it.
Because sometimes, I don't know, like I'm up just because I can't sleep the older I get, the more weird times it is. I'm like, thank God, because the longest time I would just send an email when I got to it. And then I realized that by doing that, I was giving people permission to contact me at any time. So I was
Mm.
like, ooh, because if I would send an email at 10, they're like, we can, like, it was like permission. They're like, we can message her at 10. And I was like, oh, I got to change that. It was like
Yeah, it's all
retraining
about
people.
exactly. It's all about finding the tools and the techniques that allow you to sit well with a certain, like once you've made a decision, you're like, okay, so what can I do to support me? And for me, it was a scheduling tool. The other would be like to have like a templated email ready to go. And then the other was to stipulate what my working hours were in my email signature. And that required me not opening my mouth to say no. And that somehow became like really easy for me to do. And then so when I have to say no, I know that it means that I'm saying yes to something bigger and something that I value more. And I'm giving someone else the opportunity if I have to if there's somebody who wants to work with me and there's a coach that I feel be more aligned to working with them, it allows me to give that person a referral, right? So like everybody wins.
Yeah, I love that. So going forward now in your business and in your world, what do you have your target on? What is coming up for you? What are you excited about?
I'm really excited about the new collection of stationery that we're offering, and I'm very, very excited and to offer more mentoring sessions, productivity consults through Ponderlily, because it was, you know, I know what it was like to go buy a planner and then be like, okay, now what? You
Yeah.
know?
What do I do with this?
And now what? And as a high performance coach, like I am like certified and I'm equipped to help people make the most of their time and like the decisions that they want to make. And so that's something that we are going to start offering like in just a very few days actually. So I'm excited. That's what's next because it will allow me to live into the purpose and serve like our community in a better way. That was always my intention, you know, in the beginning. It was never okay with me just to create a planner and just go, here you go. And I've
Good
always
luck.
offered free workshops. Good luck, bye. But like it was always my, I always offered free workshops. I think I've done like 6 already this year. You know, and people are always surprised, like, oh, wait, like we can access free workshops when we get the plan. I'm like, yes, you can. Like, so it's all about like, I really want to serve people and feeling that they're not alone. And, you know, people are often very shy to say, like, you know, I'm not really a morning person or my schedule looks like this. Oh, you know, and asking for help is often it can be quite challenging. And I want to make sure that like people are not left alone to just, you know, with a planner to go and do their thing. And if they need help, they can come to me.
I love that. So give us where the best place is, because we know from listening to you on the interview that you don't like to be everywhere. So where are your favorite places to hang out that people can go and find you, as well as find all the products and services you have to offer?
Great. So I am on Facebook at Ponderlily, and if you go to I love answering direct messages via Instagram. Like my grid is pretty static, but if you are like I chat to people a lot. Like I send them voice notes. So if you go to at We Are Ponderlily, I'm the one who answers messages there. And you can find our line of stationery, www.ponderlily.com.
And for those of you that are just on the fence with, you know, if you're computerized and you're like, oh, it's all electronic for me, there's stickers. And I'm just saying, as an adult, stickers bring me a lot of joy as much as they did as a kid. So as soon as I saw that on the site, I'm like, there's stickers too? Carina, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for talking, you know, to us today. And I think there was so many key points here. And I really appreciate you being honest with the message of, you know, this is something that you can repeat. This is something that you can change. And this is something that should, you know, your scheduling and your busyness and what you want to do in life should change as you change. This isn't something that's a one and done.
So it's been my absolute pleasure to chat with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, she's one of my favorite people. Carina, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing so much information. I think, you know, not only productivity, but I wanted to have her on because I think it's important for us to understand that, you know, it's okay to change your mind on what you're doing. And if your success means still working, you know, a 9 to 5 and having a business as well, you get to decide what you want your success to look like. And I really wanted, you know, to showcase this. Not only do you get to decide what you want success to look like, but you get to decide what your schedule you know, what you want that to look like, what you want it to be. And sometimes it's something that you can start from the beginning. Sometimes it's something that you need to revamp. And sometimes it's a slow progress to get yourself to the point where, you know, you still have the productivity, you're still getting stuff done, but you're not feeling that busyness, that you're spending all of your time just running like a chicken with your head cut off, that you take those moments to schedule in you time, that you take those moments to schedule in family time, that you take those moments to schedule in where you want to work on your values and do things that you can be like, I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I experienced that, both in your personal life and in your business life. And I really think that, her website, which will have all of the links, Ponderlily, has a lot of features that allow you to do stuff. And like I said, I'm going to link to a couple of the products that are my favorite. The one is the undated planner. I didn't know there was perforated pages at the back, so I'm so excited about that, but I've got one of those on the way. And the other one is she has a meal planning notepad. And I was really excited about this because on one side it has like your week and you get to meal plan. And on the other side, you get to do your shopping list, which is perforated. So you can take that off and take with you shopping and you don't have to take the whole planner pad. I don't know why perforations bring me such joy, but the sound of it ripping just, yeah, it's like bubble wrap is the best way I can describe it when you get bubble wrap in a package. So it's the simple things in life, let's be honest. But, whether you are a person who really likes digital stuff, I do feel that having that, paper in front of you, having something that you can completely disconnect yourself from everything that is going on in your business and just sit and really, be present and just be in front of, how do I want my time to look? Am I taking a moment to stop and appreciate how far I've come, where I am, the things that I did that were amazing? These are all key things that I've learned in business are really, really important to keep track of. And you've heard me say before, we always will write down what excited us every day. What was something that you were like, oh my God, this was so exciting, because it's so easy to forget. And so it's really fun to go back and look at the board and pull something out of the jar and being like, right, I totally forgot how we were excited about this milestone or this little thing or this email or somebody who responded. And it just brings back those good feelings. So I challenge you to do two things. I challenge you to make more white space on your calendar, to do exactly what Karina was talking about looking at your values and looking at your schedule. And is your schedule reflective of those values that you want to have? So get to that and go and definitely check out Ponderlily and everything that, she has to offer. These are all amazing tools that I think will really be able to help you achieve these goals. And they're beautiful and classy. And I just think you'll really like them, whether you are a mom running kids around or whether you are the CEO of a huge organization. It works no matter where you are on the scale of things. So there definitely is something for everyone there. And no matter what it is that you're doing today, make sure that you're scheduling in time to laugh and have fun. It's why it's my motto. Make sure that you're taking time to have fun, because if you're not having the fun, why are you doing it all?